I like the mysteries of it. I like thinking that you know what you're doing and how to do it, and discovering every day that you don't completely.
There's going to be a going on the Directors UK website.
Oh my God.
I love the whole process of filmmaking.
I love every little part of the process, I have to say.
So this is a kind of pretty much traditional pastime for British summer film days.
It's the editing process that I think is the most challenging, the most rewarding. That's when I'm at my happiest.
I love working with other people. You know, they're going to bring something to it that I hadn't even thought of.
I think that one of the most amazing and rewarding things about being a director is unexpected stuff happening in front of your very eyes.
The work of the director is to guide the actor and help them create a performance, which is 100% believable.
You can never make a perfect film. You can never really get it right, but you can always go on learning and learning and learning and trying. And, you know, that's got to be the definition of the perfect job, isn't it?
Be bold. Try to push boundaries and don't listen to people who advise you to play it safe.
You're always looking for something else, something you don't know about, something that wasn't even written in the script, some kind of magic thing that can happen.
You've got to look for the unexpected. The really exciting thing about making documentaries is when you go out there and think you know what you're going to get and you don't.
And remember at all times it's a team business and that you do not have the monopoly on good ideas.
Bad directors are the people who don't listen to anyone. A good director is someone who listens to someone, to everyone, and with their own personal vision takes everything and makes something that is wicked.
Every day you go to work, you've got a new problem and a new challenge. And it's the way you share those challenges and problems with the people you work with.
There are times when you just can't get what you want, and sometimes you do have to let that go for the sake of the rest of your crew and your sanity.
You know, failure is inevitable and instructive, and hopefully there'll be a success or two along the way.
If things are going wrong, if people are getting tired, if people are fed up and grumbling, it's only your energy that's going to lead them through to the other side.
No matter what you've directed in the past, you always have another film you want to direct. You never give up, you never retire. It stays with you all the way through your life.
You've had a lot of people, and you have been influenced by a lot of what you have seen, you know, a lot of what you've read and studied and all of that. Terry Gilliam gave you some advice before you made Reservoir Dogs. You remember what it was?
Yeah, I sure do. You see movies and they can be full of vision, and you know you want your movies to be like that. But you know you see these other movies that don't have any vision, but I'm sure the director tried. So what's the difference between this guy versus that guy? How was this guy able to get this on the screen, and how was this guy not able to get this on the screen? I'm sure if I talked to that guy, he'd tell all these, you know, I'm sure he wanted that. Who knows? And I was afraid of being that guy. I want to be that guy. And, well, Terry Gilliam definitely has a vision. No 2, 3, 4 ways about it. So we were at Sundance, and it was like a lunch going on at the picnic tables there, and everyone else FO'd. And it was just me and him talking, which was a thrill. And I go, look, you know, you have a very specific vision in your movies, and it's right there on the screen. How do you do that? How do you get that vision that's in your head? How do you get it on the screen? And he said, well, Quentin, you have to understand, as a director, you don't have to do that. Your job is to hire talented people who can do that. You hire a cinematographer who can get the kind of quality that you want. You don't have to be able to know how to take the lights and move them around to create an effect. You hire a talented costume designer who can give the colors that you need and the flamboyance or not that you want. You hire a production designer who can do that. Your job is explaining your vision. Your job is articulating to them what you want on the screen. And then all of a sudden, the whole mystical, shamanistic thing that I thought directing was just went boop. And I realized I could do that. That it wasn't this Merlin-like magic kit that I needed to know the right spell in order to conjure. I can describe what I want. I know what's in my head. That's the easiest part. I'm good at describing.
Thank you very much. Oh, George, how young we were. Like the students here watching us tonight. And I think that, and like George, at the last moment I was told to come up here and say a few words, so I didn't really prepare anything at home the night before, so let me just talk a little bit about something I said, you know, when a journalist asked me years ago a question I really couldn't answer. You know, they said, what do you do? Why do you do this? And I don't know where it came from, but I sort of turned to the journalist in a flip kind of way. I said, I dream for a living. Years later, I realized, well, that's exactly what I do. I dream for a living. This is what I've done all my life. This is what I wanted to do with my life. And yet, I never really had a career plan. We all have plans. We all make plans. It sometimes starts when you have to declare a major. And I, of course, was at a college that didn't have the major that I would have declared, which was film and television. So I was an undeclared major. I majored in English because my father told me I needed a fallback career in case the movie directing thing didn't work out. And he said that if you major in English, you can teach. And teaching is a noble profession. Something that I have come to understand is maybe the noblest profession in the world today. Teachers perhaps are also the most underpaid heroes in the world today. But as noble as it seemed to be, I wanted to be a movie director. And I thought I'd share with you how it all started. Everything I'm about to tell you happened completely by accident. And I think it all started out when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and my father came over to me and said, I'm going to take you to see the greatest show on earth. And when you promise a 6, 7, 8-year-old young boy that you're about to see the greatest show on earth, I couldn't have been more excited. My father explained there were going to be lion tamers and circus acts. There were going to be clowns and trapeze artists. And I was absolutely delighted, and I looked forward to this for a week. On the weekend, we got into the car. We drove to Philadelphia. We lived in New Jersey, in Haddon Township, New Jersey. We drove into Philadelphia, and it was very, very cold. It was wintertime around the holiday season. And we stood in a very long line, I remember, against a solid red brick wall for what seemed like hours. I think we actually stood in line for about 2.5 hours. The line just inched forward. And I didn't quite understand. I was waiting to see the tent, and there was not a tent, there was a brick wall. We walked into some rather large doors, and we walked into a very kind of a dimly lit room. I remember the room had a lot of pink and purple lights, and the ceiling looked like a church. It was a lot of Rococo carvings. There wasn't any kind of iconic, symbology in the room, but it felt like a place of worship, and a little bit like our synagogue, actually. And I still didn't quite understand about the greatest show on earth. and I sat down in some seats, and they were all facing forward, not bleachers, but seats. It was a large red curtain. I'll never forget this. And the curtain opened, the lights went down, and a dimly lit image came on the screen, and it was flickering, and it was kind of grainy because we were sitting way in front. And suddenly I realized that my father had lied to me and had betrayed me and had taken me to a circus that wasn't a circus. It was a movie about a circus, and I had never seen a movie before. That was the first movie I ever saw, Cecil B. DeMille's The Greatest Show on Earth. I had never seen a motion picture before. I had seen a lot of television because my dad was an electrical engineer, and in his spare time, when he wasn't working for RCA, he was repairing the early television sets of the early 50s. So I knew television, but I didn't know movies. That was my first movie experience. And I think the feeling of disappointment and regret and betrayal lasted only about 10 minutes. And then I became just one more victim of this tremendous drug called cinema. And I was no longer in a theater. I was no longer in a seat. I wasn't aware of the surroundings. It was no longer a church. It was a place of equal devotion and worship, however. I became part of an experience. And I became part of the lives of a lot of people that I never would meet, and I would only get to know in this one story, but that became my life. Now, in the center of this movie, if any of you remember the Cecil B. DeMille film, The Greatest Show on Earth, there's a tremendous train wreck where a train speeding along the tracks is encountered by a car, a person trying to stop the train to flag down the train, and the train hits the car flips over the top of the engine, and the train goes off the tracks, and there's a tremendous disaster where all the cars pile up. It was a special effect sequence. Later, I learned it was a miniature train, but it was as real as I've ever seen anything in my life. It was the greatest disaster I ever beheld, and for me, it began my interest not in making movies, but in asking my dad to get me a Lino electric train. So I went from wanting to become part of this incredible experience to wanting to own my first electric train. And that holiday season, my dad got me my first Lionel engine and a little coal car and a caboose and a few passenger cars. And the next year, I asked for the same thing. I said, I'd like another engine. So I had 2 trains. And as I got older, I began to collect every year more and more cars and people and semaphores and crossing signals. I became a complete electric train nut. And I had a rather large layout in our, and by this time, by the way, we had moved from New Jersey to Phoenix, Arizona, which by the way, when you're about 12 years old, there is nothing to do in Phoenix, Arizona, nothing at all. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was really interested in seeing what it would look like if I could recreate that memory, now several years old, of The Greatest Show on Earth, and could I recreate the train wreck? And I actually took my 2 trains, and I just rammed them into each other. And they broke, and I told my dad the train had broke, and he said, how did it happen? I said, I rammed them into each other, and my dad had them repaired. And the next week, I crashed my trains into each other again, and the other train broke. And my dad said, look, you know, I'm going to take the train set away. If you crash these things into each other one more time, you're not going to have trains anymore. But there was something about whatever the primal sense of wanting to destroy something because of that movie, whatever got into me, I needed to see those trains crash into each other. And so I also didn't want to lose my train set. My dad had sitting around the house, which I always had taken for granted, this little 8mm Kodak film movie camera with a turret that had 3 lenses, kind of wide, medium, and close-up lens. I never really bothered with the camera. But I thought, well, I know what I can do. What if I film the trains crashing into each other? I can just watch the film over and over and over again. And that's how I made my first movie. I shot 1 train, all in the camera. I didn't have an editing machine. I just put the camera low to the track, the way we as children like to put our eyes close to the toys we're playing with, so the scale seems to be, the scale seems to be realistic. And I just filmed 1 train going left to right. I filmed the other train, cut the camera, turn it around, the other train coming right to left. And intuitively, I figured out if I put the camera in the middle and they met in the middle, I'd have my train wreck. Well, that's exactly what I did. Luckily, the trains didn't break, but I looked at that film over and over and over again. And then I thought, I wonder what else I could do with this camera. And that's how it began. And that's how I became a director. And the first time I sensed that an audience was kind of agreeing with my choice of profession was when I was a Boy Scout, and I went out for the photography merit badge, and I wanted to, and the requirement in the merit badge simply said you have to tell a picture with still photographs. Our still camera broke. I went to the Scoutmaster. I said, can I tell a story with our home movie camera? He said yes, to fulfill the requirements for the merit badge. And I made a little Western called Gunsmog. And I'm really dating myself because, of course, James Arness and Gunsmoke was all the rage on television in those days. And I made this little Western with my sisters and my friends and my next-door neighbors and some of the Boy Scouts. And everybody had cowboy suits because we lived in Arizona, my goodness, you know. And so we all brought our cowboy suits out, and I made this little Western movie and showed it to the Boy Scout troop on a Friday night when we had a meeting, and they went ballistic. They were screaming and clapping and laughing, both with and at the movie. I didn't care. It was a response. And the response set me on fire. It absolutely set me on fire, and I never wanted to live without some kind of affirmation, some kind of collective feedback. And maybe that's why my early movies were all about you. My early movies were all soliciting you, making you my partners, thinking about you behind the camera, thinking what would turn you on, what would get you excited, what would make you laugh, what would make you scream. How could I create suspense out of whole cloth when that darn shark never worked? And you were my partners. My audience, you know, I collaborated with you and you collaborated with me, and I think the beginning of my career I had this wonderful experience, and the thing I really want to emphasize is I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. When you have a dream, and the dream isn't something you dream and then it happens. The dream is something you never knew was going to come into your life. Dreams always come from behind you, not right between your eyes. It sneaks up on you. But when you have a dream, it doesn't often come at you screaming in your face, this is who you are, this is what you must be for the rest of your life. Sometimes a dream almost whispers. And I've always said to my kids, the hardest thing to listen to, your instincts, your human personal intuition, always whispers, it never shouts. Very hard to hear. So you have to, every day of your lives, be ready to hear what whispers in your ear. It very rarely shouts. And if you can listen to the whisper, and if it tickles your heart, and it's something you think you want to do for the rest of your life, then that is going to be what you do for the rest of your life, and we will benefit from everything you do. Thank you very much.
You think that you can do anything, I think, at a certain point, and maybe, Steve, if it's from your art brain, you can. You know, I love what you say. You say just create stuff.
No,
just make
no,
stuff.
I can't do everything. No, I know, you know, certain things. You know what you can do, but I mean, the tools are big. The tools are lots of tools, but you know what you can make with those tools, but you can't make everything with those tools. So no, I think it's obviously you've tested that you can't make everything, and I think, you know, it's one of those things which, you know, I sort of, I fear that in some ways this whole idea of getting lost, I think you do it because you want to experiment more than anything else.
You learn from it.
Yes, and through the experiments, that's the only way you get new questions. So anyway, no, but it's...
And Hunger, that was your first film.
Yes.
What gave you that confidence to, because it felt very, when I saw it, I really liked that movie and felt really competent, just visually, the way you told the story and the choices you made for a first movie.
I felt very comfortable on a film set. I'd never been on a film set before, but I just felt very comfortable. It felt natural to me. And I liked the crew, and I liked the caterers, and like the hair and makeup people. I like people, I like that. I like that we were doing things together. And I had all these experts working to help me make my film. I think that's
Or were they telling you things like, well, you know, when you shoot this scene, you should do this?
It wasn't a case of that. It was a case of this guy's come into Northern Ireland to make this film like Bobby Sands. You know, he's committed, and I think, you know, when I was talking to them, there was a lot of, forgive me, there's a lot of, again, there was a lot of love, and from that, you know, it elevated everyone to make this film, because at that time it was a situation where everyone was, how can I say, at that time, helpless in a way. People couldn't do anything about that particular period in time, but through making this film, they thought physically they can. And that was very empowering. It was very empowering, and it was, yeah, I mean, again, it was going on a bit, but it was all about the story and it needing to be cinema. And what's so wonderful about us sitting here having this conversation is how powerful cinema is right now. A lot of people are talking about television, but cinema is just so powerful. You know, I'm humble. It is. And it's very humbling that we can actually make, for me, I can make a film and then a lot of people around the world see it. It's huge.